Hi, it's Ellen, and today we're going to be talking about the supply curve. So, the supply curve shows the relationship between price, which is on the vertical axis, and quantity, which is on the horizontal axis. So, when a firm's profits increase, it is incentivized to produce more output. This is because the more it produces, the more profit it will earn. So, when costs of production fall, a firm will be incentivized to supply a higher quantity at a given price. This is indicated by a rightward shift in the supply curve. Subsidies, for example, could lower a firm's average cost per unit and thus encourage them to expand production as well. So, what causes a supply curve shift? The supply curve shift could be caused by changes in the price of inputs, which is known as the cost of production, a discovery of a new technology, which allows the firm to produce at a lower cost, or changes in government policy. For example, the introduction of an indirect tax might shift the supply curve to the left. However, the implementation of a subsidy might shift it to the right. The US government imposes a tax on alcoholic drinks that collects around $8 billion per year from producers. Taxes are treated as a cost by businesses, and so higher costs leads to a decrease in supply. Thus, taxes decreases supply. So, if we see that the supply curve shifts to the right, we know that there has been an increase in supply. And if we consider how government intervention affects businesses, we know that subsidies can lower a firm's average cost per unit and thus encourage them to expand production levels and consequently will help the supply curve shift to the right. So, what factors determine the supply of goods and services? Firstly, let's talk about the price of the good. A rise in price will almost always lead to an increase in the quantity supplied of that good or service. This is called an extension in supply. This is because the increase in price incentivizes the firm to increase their output. Economists call this positive relationship the law of supply, and that's why your supply curve is shaped upwards in comparison to the demand curve. Reductions in the cost of production will lead to an increase in supply because producers' profits have risen, and this can be caused by technological improvements, as this increases efficiency. And as the cost of productions will drop, the supply curve can shift to the right. And finally, increases in productivity means that the output per input of a factor of supply can increase, and thus supply shifts to the right. An indirect tax on supply raises the overall cost of production, thus shifting the supply curve to the left. So just to recap the factors which will lead to an increase in the supply, there could be price rises, increases in productivity, improvements in technology, or a fall in indirect tax. And if we just kind of really break down how technological improvements can impact supply, we know that it will increase the efficiency of the productive process, therefore reducing the cost of production, therefore shifting the supply curve to the right. And the supply curve itself, we know, represents the relationship between price and quantity. So if we give a bit of an example about how the various factors can affect supply, an indirect tax on supply shifts the supply curve to the left. Technological improvements can lead to the supply curve shifting to the right. A rise in productivity can increase supply and therefore shift it to the right as well. And a rise in price will lead to increases in the quantity supplied as firms are more incentivized to produce as they hope that their profits will increase. Thank you very much for listening to this episode about supply. Next time, we're going to be looking into the elasticity of supply.